Now, for a long time, we've been thinking as a university of business how to connect with the media, how to have them explain financial data, economic data, budget data, how to attract investors into the country. Well, we did this very well, and the experiences are amazing. So much so that some of our media students who finished this program thanks to Bloomberg, and I'm going to introduce to you the lady behind all that, became chief communications officers of presidential offices. Many of them started their own media companies and so on and so forth. In 2018, we became the secretariat for the Bloomberg Media Initiative Africa Business Financial Journalism Program, and we have developed a significant program that we want to share with every university who are members of the AAU who would like to have it. Besides that, somebody else will tell you more beautiful things to come. There is support to do it and to grow it into a fully degree awarding program. I have been part of the team of developing it in 5 countries. And I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that the transformation amongst financial media journalists is out of this world. The effects right now, after training more than 800, those are the certified ones, but I think we have reached 1,000 business media journalists in a postgraduate certificate to help them understand how to communicate this financial and economics data and to attract investment. And therefore, I now introduce to you the head of the Africa and Middle East corporate lead for the Bloomberg Corporate Philanthropy, Ms. Irena Stennett, who has been with us all this time, and I hope she will explain to you more. Ms. Irena Stennett, please give her a big clap. Yeah.
Does this work? Oh, it does. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Jenga. I'm honored to be here, and thank you all for staying. I know it's been a long day. I want to take a moment to thank Secretary General Oyewole for inviting Bloomberg and our team, including the Strathmore Business School representatives, to attend today's conference. We are honored to be here. I also want to recognize Professor Saeed Bakri Osman, the president of the Association of African Universities. Again, thank you very much for hosting us. Before I begin my remarks, I'd like to show a brief video.
Let's start with the data. 1/3 of all news coverage in Africa is reported by non-African journalists.
I'm sorry. Our news. We're getting the voices, but not the image. Thank you.
1/3 of all news coverage in Africa is reported by non-African journalists.
Our news drives markets, so it's important for us to have reporters who are invested in those cities and countries writing for our news organization. My name is Irena Stennett. My job at Bloomberg is to lead our media initiative in Africa to advance business and financial reporting. As we were trying to recruit for our news bureaus in Africa, we found that many highly qualified journalists had limited experience writing data-driven business and financial stories. So we consulted media houses, governments, foundations, and university officials, and we partnered with business schools and journalism schools to provide postgraduate education.
Bloomberg Media Initiative Africa advances financial reporting and provides career opportunities in journalism.
It's a rigorous program. It's 6 months, 7 modules that journalists could take while they were still working with access to the Bloomberg terminal to prepare them to write data-driven business stories. In 6 years, the initiative has graduated over 700 journalists in more than 16 countries. When you can develop a public-private partnership, you can really drive change.
Bloomberg dedicates almost all of its profits to transforming lives around the world.
Thank you, Frank. So the Bloomberg Media Initiative Africa is actually part of a larger program. Oh, we have to switch back to that. Thank you. It's part of a larger global business and financial journalism training program that we started in 2009 in Beijing, China, with the Tsinghua University. Since then, we've expanded our global business and financial journalism program to 7 continents. And Africa is one of our largest markets. We are currently working with 16 universities in 8 countries on the continent. Our program in Africa is an executive education program. Our program in China is a master's degree program, and in India is an undergraduate degree program. We also, the importance of this program for Bloomberg is largely to strengthen business and economic news coverage, because we believe that increasing market transparency will drive more international investment into Africa, and in so doing will foster and further inclusive economic growth. But the most important thing about it is that it's not enough to attract international investors. We need journalists who can interrogate all aspects of the markets and the economies and the finances and the business. We can't leave the coverage of business and economies and investments on the continent to just Western journalists. We must make sure that journalists in Africa, on the continent, communications professionals are well equipped in business and financial and data-driven reporting. And that's why we started this program in 2014 when Mike Bloomberg was on the continent and announced the initiative. Other key goals is increasing market transparency, advancing business journalism, and connecting talent to our news organization as well as other news organizations across the continent. Why did Bloomberg take this on? Because supporting transparent markets and to support transparent markets and leverage our expertise as a news and financial information service organization. It also furthers our goals to strengthen communities and create lasting impact in cities where we live and work. Just some of the statistics. Right now, our global business journalism program, we have 41 programs. We're working with 93 educational and nonprofit partners, and we have 3 Bloomberg Terminal Labs across this program, and we've trained globally over 1,200 students and journalists in business and financial reporting. This program is very key to our work on the continent. We think it is extremely important to partner with the most leading and preeminent universities and colleges and business and journalism schools on the continent to provide postgraduate education for journalists and communication professionals in business and financial journalism. And at this point, I'd like to turn the program over to my Senior Program Officer, Ogul Dang. Thank you.
Thanks, Irena and Dr. Jenga, and it's an honor to be here with you all today. As Irena mentioned, the program was launched in 2014 in Johannesburg by Mike Bloomberg, and it's really about promoting the links between business and financial reporting, transparency, accountability, and economic growth. Irena already mentioned our goals in terms of the program, and a big part of the program is also empowering vital reporting by backing a new generation of African business and financial journalists. Dean Njenga alluded to this earlier. There's talent across the continent in journalism and in business. A lot of times, especially as the media has moved away from being specialized, with specialized beats, many of the media houses that we interviewed and even some of the journalism schools that we spoke to said it would be easier to hire a business school graduate and teach them to write about financial markets and reporting than to hire a journalism school graduate. And so the program is really designed to help enhance the training that journalists go through, as Irena mentioned, so they can cover financial and data and economic reporting. The program has several tiers. So one of them, which we'll get into more detail, is the pipeline program that Dean Njenga Strathmore Business School and the other schools helped us deliver, the Financial Journalism Training Program. But another angle is also working with senior editors and leaders in the newsroom, also to promote transparency and accountability in the media space, and really helping create a platform for senior leaders in the media industry in business and financial journalism and economic reporting. So there's a picture of the fellows. We had a fellowship program where there were 45 fellows from South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya, and they met over a series of 4 seminars on leadership over 2 years, and they continue to meet as part of our alumni network. But it really helps editors become more knowledgeable about the business and financial concepts in the newsroom, as well as have them be leaders in this space. Okay. And then one of the other aspects of this program is looking at grassroots. We partnered with the Ford Foundation in addition to the universities that Dean Njenga and Irena mentioned. And one of the things that the Ford Foundation really encouraged us to do was to look at grassroots level. Community radio, community media in most countries here on the continent are the main source of news for most people. And it was really important to strengthen economic and financial reporting, but also reporting on transparency and accountability at the grassroots level. And over the years, since this program has been launched, we were able to support 17 grants to 12 organizations. And it's really important to empower reporting at the community level, especially when we had the pandemic, because that's a major source of news and also a major source of countering misinformation at the grassroots level. And also strengthening community voices also helps enhance greater transparency. For example, this is a picture of Bush Radio in South Africa. The grantees had a session on financial literacy and helping communities be more involved in their budget cycles in their communities in the Western Cape, which was very helpful. And then when you look at the whole media ecosystem, there's also looking at policymakers, media owners and operators, C-suite leaders who influence and support media. And part of the Bloomberg Media Initiative Africa is we have an annual convening, which hasn't been held during COVID, but typically it's held once a year. The last time was in 2019 in Dakar. And at this annual convening, it's really an opportunity to get leading voices in both the media space, government officials, for example. When we held this forum in Accra, the president of Ghana opened the session to talk about the challenges that media faces, but also looking at issues around sustainability in the media. A big thing that keeps happening, as we know, is social media and how social media has been driving away revenue for the media. And so it's an opportunity for business owners to talk about the challenges and opportunities that they face in running media houses and media programs in Africa. And then last but not least, a big part of the anchor program of Bloomberg Media Initiative Africa is the Financial Journalism Training Program. We partnered with distinguished universities across the continent, as you can see on this slide, and we've had more than 800 graduates of the program. Bloomberg has gone on to hire 16 from this pipeline as well, and it's really been transformational in the sense that we have a lot of alumni that come up to us. I'm based in Johannesburg, and they talk about how the program has just changed how they look at things. So the skills have always been there, but for example, we had Bella in Nairobi break the Chase Bank story. So many of our alumni have gone on to do different things or to get promotions in their career or identify stories that hold leaders and businesses to account, but also presents Africa in a different narrative, presents it as an investment opportunity, not just the stories that we see about strife and conflict, which are there, but also looking at Africa from an economic perspective, open for investment and open for enhancing educational opportunities. And so I'm going to pass over to our colleague, Christine Mwangi from Strathmore Business School. She'll talk more about the role of the Secretariat in the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Aguil. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. So I serve as a Secretariat Director based at Strathmore Business School. So the Financial Journalism Training Program is a multidisciplinary executive program that is delivered over the course of about 19 contact days, but over the course of 6 months. So it includes several modules. You can see them listed there: the media landscape, financial journalism, economics, public policy, and finance and accounting, financial markets, data analysis, and environment and climate. So these are diverse subjects and topics that are taught to the delegates over the course of over the course of the 6-month period, where they meet for 3 to 4 days a month. As you would appreciate a program of this nature that is implemented across several countries, there needs to be an element of standardization. So the Secretariat function is to support the countries of implementation in running the program. So the Secretariat team is based in Nairobi, but we also have country program management teams based in the countries who work together with faculty and who work together in terms of recruiting students. So the Secretariat also works with the institutions, the consortium partners, in terms of standardizing curriculum. So there's a set curriculum which was developed by African faculty from different countries during the first intake, which was between Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. So they developed the core curriculum. But there's a process of standardization and contextualizing the curriculum in the countries of implementation. So the Secretariat, together with the Bloomberg team, work to conduct this the contextualization of the curriculum. It's called the curriculum update or refresh. After that, there's also a situation, in situations where the program is starting off in the countries, there are faculty training workshops and program management workshops, where the country teams are trained on how to implement on how to manage the program, collect data, manage students, and the faculty are trained on interactive, or rather share best practices on interactive learning methods and methodologies and pedagogical approaches, because it's delivered in an executive education learning format. So faculty come together, those who are teaching in the countries, and share best practices and also learn from other faculty in other countries who have successfully delivered the program. So from our experience, there's a huge capacity building component that takes place for both administrative staff and faculty in the schools, because they get to meet other professionals who are training media and other professionals who are also business and economics experts. So there's a great learning opportunity for the faculty who participate on the program. So at this point, I'd like to invite Aguil Deng to speak to us a little bit more about Business Financial Journalism Symposium. Thank you.
All right, so me again, very briefly, because I know we're running late, but as Christine was talking about the program, we were able to bring it to 16 schools, and the University of Rhodes, their journalism school, will be adopting the program and integrating it into a master's program. In Nigeria, UNILAG will offer it as postgraduate diploma. In Kenya, Strathmore Business School will also be offering the program as a postgraduate diploma, and also in Ghana with UGBS, and Zambia at UNILES, she's reminding me. And so, but we recognize that we're not going to be able to bring all of the programs in this way, the way that Christine just described, to all 57 countries and territories on the continent. And so therefore, we partnered with the University of Victoria Gordon Institute of Business Science, GIBS, their business school, to do research on how we could find a way to programs which would enable us to share the blueprint, basically, of the advancing business and financial journalism education for interested business schools and journalism schools across the continent, so they could be their offerings in a similar way, and either offer it as a short course, a degree program, or an executive education offering, as we did in these markets. And what we're planning to do is host 2 symposiums over the next 2 years, 2 symposia. And what GIBS did is they conducted a series of research, desktop research. They did curriculum mapping based on the offering of the executive training short course. They also did higher education mapping and identified a number of schools that would be candidates that might be interested in expanding their business programs to offer journalism or their journalism programs to offer journalism. And they had initial phone calls and initial outreach to deans of these universities across the continent. And as a next step, we met with the AAU team, and we intend to do is also send a survey out to the vice chancellors of the institutions and members of the AAU to gauge interest in bringing the financial journalism and economic journalism offers to different institutions by sharing the blueprint at a symposium. And so that is, in a nutshell, our presentation. Thank you so much to Dr. Lucy, to the AAU, also to Strathmore Business School for being here, and all of you for taking time out of your evening to listen to our presentation. If you have questions, you reach out to us via email, and we're going to hand the floor back over to the panel as regularly scheduled. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the Bloomberg team for that fantastic presentation. I'd like to call up the panelists, the other speakers in this session. So first, can we bring up Dr. Elizabeth Colucci, who will be talking about the HACWA initiative and results. Fantastic. So Dr. Elizabeth is the coordinator of HACWA 2, the harmonization of African higher education, quality assurance and accreditation. Global. Thank you. Give you the floor.
Okay, hello again, everyone. I have the honor and the pleasure of being able to address you twice today. I will try to be concise. I know it's late in the agenda. The problem is that we have so many interesting initiatives to hear about. It is a challenge, and I applaud you for your patience. You had a bit of a teaser in the last session about HACWA, the famous HACWA initiative, which stands for Harmonization, Quality Assurance, and Accreditation in African Higher Education. This initiative is part of the flagship that was discussed in the last session of the EU under the EU's Global Gateway Package. What I will try to do today is to highlight what we think are kind of the essential takeaways from conducting this initiative essentially since 2015, and also to give you a preview of what's to come, so that you can understand better the significance of that and also the opportunities that you might have as chancellors, but as also your organizations that are present here today as well. HACWA, I think, needs to be seen in an evolving context. The tendency in the circles that are committed to the topic of quality assurance and accreditation to talk only about quality assurance and accreditation. And what was nice about this last panel is that I think we could place quality assurance and accreditation in a wider panoramic view of what harmonization is and means potentially to Africa, what the different tools and instruments for that harmonization process might be. Quality assurance is one of them. It is not the only one. But also to consider the fact that quality assurance is something that has an evolving relevance. We've defined quality assurance systems in many countries. We've defined accreditation procedures. We have standards. We have guidelines for this. But we must consider that higher education institutions are faced with a strong force of digitalization, both a challenge and an opportunity, and that affects quality or should affect quality. They're faced with opportunities for and need for internationalization within Africa, beyond Africa. They're challenged in many instances with a post-pandemic recovery, and quality assurance requires resources. So I think this initiative needs to be seen in that framework. And of course, it needs to be seen as part of a bigger puzzle for Africa and for EU-Africa cooperation that looks at and considers science capacity, employment, trade, but also meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. So I want to place it in that lens so that when I start to talk about some of the technical aspects of the contract, we don't lose sight of the bigger picture. HACWA also starts to be seen really as a structural initiative, and I say that proudly, and I say that with gratitude towards the European Union. This has been financed since 2015. We are now entering a third phase, and it really shows a sustained commitment to this agenda by the EU in partnership with the African Union Commission. And it also shows that the initiative, because of this time that it's been allowed to operate, has been able to gain some traction, not just in terms of its inputs and its outputs, but also in terms of its engagement of major stakeholder organizations across the African continent, who are not just beneficiaries of this initiative, but also drivers and implementers. I think had we more time this afternoon, it wouldn't be me presenting this initiative to you today. It would rather be a panel of partners, including, of course, the Association of African Universities, which is one of the key partners and co-coordinating this important endeavor, but also the German Academic Exchange Service, the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education, and 9 strategic implementing partners we have across the continent, ranging from CAMES in Francophone Africa to the Association of Universities in Southern Africa, SARUA, et cetera, et cetera. So I think really they are the voices, but due to time limitations, I've been asked to come before you today. But I want to recognize those other important voices in communicating this initiative and implementing this initiative. I wanted to take a little bit of a comparative look at the objectives as they've evolved. You see here both the general objective and specific objectives of HACWA 2. This has taken place between 2019 and 2022. We just concluded this earlier this year, actually. And there you see the general objective has really been to support and improve students' employability and mobility across the continent through harmonization of quality assurance systems and support for quality assurance culture in higher education institutions, but also by supporting directly the African Union in their implementation of what is called the Pan-African Quality Assurance and Accreditation Framework, which is a framework for harmonization across the African continent in higher education with a specific focus and lens on quality assurance. If we flash forward now to HACWA 3, again, this initiative has just started. In fact, we're launching it here in Namibia. The objectives have evolved, and I think this is interesting. Now you see the focus in the general objective on not just employability and mobility, but at a larger level on sustainable development, on enhancing citizenship, on democratic values. And I think that just goes to show that now when we talk about quality and harmonization, it really is linked to these wider goals and purposes of higher education. This, I think, is this diagram we show frequently, and I think it's very important to raise awareness for what HACWA has been predicated on, and it has been predicated not necessarily on an EU agenda, nor on the European higher education area or any of these EU processes, which are important, inspiration. It is really predicated on an African higher education harmonization agenda, which has been articulated and defined by the African Union. And this is this famous PAQA, for Pan-African Quality Assurance and Accreditation Framework. And this framework has different action lines and tools. And when we started this journey in 2015, some of these action lines and tools didn't exist. Through HACWA, we were able to nurture them and create them and promote them, but also through other investments. And you see on the right side of this diagram, for example, UNESCO has made an important contribution and continues to promote the Addis Convention. There's been support with regards to the African qualifications framework, continental qualification framework from the EU, but also from Sweden and from Germany. So I think it's important to recognize there have been other partners supporting this agenda, but the EU has really been one of the primary ones. And I'll give you some examples of how we've been able to develop some of these action lines through HAQUA. All of this, of course, is framed within the CESA 2025, so the Continental Education Strategy for Africa, which contributes then to the wider picture of Agenda 2063. So HAQUA has really been a tool for the continent to help advance in its own harmonization agenda as defined by the African Union. I wanted to first, like I said, take you through some of the main successes and takeaways of HAQUA 1 and 2, so this is to present, and then give you a very short preview of HAQUA 3. In HAQUAs 1 and 2, we worked along three major components. Training for internal quality assurance in universities and higher education institutions, training for external quality assurance providers, capacity building for internal quality assurance, but also capacity building for external quality assurance systems and agencies. And finally, and we've circled this because this is really what gives the backbone to it all, a policy agenda whereby we support CESA and attaining the PACWAF objectives. And that has been through a number of different actions, which I can elaborate a little bit further. This is the famous document which has been a major product of HAQUA 1, actually. This was published in 4 African languages, the main working languages of the African Union in 2018. It has been largely consulted and defended across the continent. It has been written by and developed by African expertise representing quality assurance systems across the continent. It has been inspired, of course, by developments in other regions, in Europe, and also built upon existing standards and guidelines for quality assurance. It is a document that is a reference point both for higher education institutions in how they manage their own internal quality assurance, and also for quality assurance regulatory bodies and agencies, and not just in how they assess programs and institutions, but also in how they assess themselves. And this document has been used to offer an assessment or evaluation program for the agencies themselves. So this famous question of who evaluates the evaluators or who accredits the accreditors. And I think this will continue to be promoted in the future as a trust-building mechanism between quality assurance agencies in Africa as they're established. We had the opportunity under HAQUA 2 to develop a user's guide for this important document, which elaborated further how to apply it. So if I'm a higher education institution, how do I read these standards and guidelines, and how do I gather evidence for them in my university? And this document provides examples of institutions in different contexts, the same for the agency. So it really helps you to use the standards and guidelines in your own specific systems. And again, this document is also in four languages. How did we, I mean, one thing is producing a document. Anyone can produce a document, but to really make it take shape and come to life and be applied, HAQUA offered extensive training programs. This is what we did under HAQUA 2 with the support and collaboration of our partner, the German Academic Exchange Service, in collaboration and consultation with many of the regional partners that have their own training initiatives. We designed a 4-cohort training program for professionals of quality assurance in the higher education institutions. And this helped them not only to learn about managing quality, but also to understand better the African tools, the African standards and guidelines, and the African framework, and why it is important to cooperate in that framework. The graduates of these courses were able to then join a pool of what are called HAQUA ambassadors, who subsequently have been used and engaged as disseminators, and were invited to apply for dissemination projects where they receive small grants to take up specific issues in their own countries and apply the knowledge from the training and apply the African tools in their own context. And you see a little map here where we cite all the different projects that were funded I've put on the slide a couple of examples. For example, our colleagues in Kenya who work for the National Commission decided that it would be interesting to do a project on creating self-assessment tools for open and distance learning in Kenya, using the African standards and guidelines as an inspiration point. So in other countries, it was more about creating a network of quality assurance practitioners. And there you have some examples, Zambia, Mauritius, etc. So these projects took different shapes, but the point was to say, you have African tools that have been agreed, like these standard and guidelines. We want you now to take them and use them and apply them in your systems and disseminate them in your systems and in your institutions as you find most appropriate and where there is most need. Coming back to the support to external quality assurance, and as I had mentioned in the previous panel, there has been a lot of support offered to building national quality assurance systems, and this moves at very different speeds in Africa. We have very consolidated national systems and agencies. If we look at Nigeria, for example, we have other systems that are really new and young and finding their footing. And so basically, the same team that designed the African Standards and Guidelines designed an external evaluation methodology for agencies and systems. You could either be an agency like the CHE in South Africa that could be fully assessed against the African Standards and Guidelines, or maybe you're a younger system that doesn't have an agency yet. For example, we did a visit in Togo, where the country was looking for support in developing their QA system. And this was done in consultation with other initiatives that came from UNESCO, from the Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie, the AUF, from the DAD, to support training in quality assurance and quality assurance system building in different African countries. And you see on this slide a list of the different countries that have been able to benefit from this action so far. And I should mention that this will be continued and upscaled considerably in the next phase. And then finally, I would like to demystify a little bit something that our dear colleague Olushula mentioned earlier on the panel, which is that HAQUA 2 in particular has contributed to advancing not just the thinking around the actual structure and governance and setup of a Pan-African Quality Assurance and Accreditation Agency, but also the stakeholder acceptance. And what we found was that in the beginning, if you flashed this term, a Pan-African agency, a lot of countries and individuals and agencies were scared of that because they thought, well, is it necessary? And do we need a Pan-African agency? And will this interfere with my country's sovereignty to accredit and quality assure my own institutions and programs? And I think the work we had to do, and again, it took a lot of rigorous discussion and debate and consultation and promotion of this concept, done by actually some of the promoters of this process in the room today. Peter Okubukula is with us, who was one of the champions, my colleague Maria Kalo from the EUA. And it really, I think, allowed us to get to a point where the major African regional organizations and stakeholders could say, we have been able to weigh in on this. It's still a work in progress. We believe it has an added value, and we agree to certain functions that this agency should have, and to the fact that it should be set up sequentially in phases, which will allow us to build ownership and capacity. I'll give you an example. One of the very first functions that this agency could take would be to take charge of promoting the African Standards and Guidelines and also supporting the external assessment of QA agencies in the continent, which we're already doing under HAQUA, but somehow we're missing that a formal African body takes over that agenda. And that's something we'll be now able to do. Now, this agency is a political commitment of the African Union. They want it. I think the job of HAQUA and all the stakeholders around the table was to say, if this is a political commitment of the African Union, let's look at the detail of what this agency should really be and do, and what this agency's added value will really be to quality assurance in the continent. And that is not necessarily duplicating whatever exists. It's creating pathways between what exists. It's promoting the African tools and agenda. It's supporting capacity building, complementing in regions of Africa that don't have structures and support for quality assurance, whereas maybe other regions do have. So those were the types of things we've discussed with this agency, and this will stay on the agenda for quite some time, because this agency will not, appear overnight, nor should it, for that matter. Finally, I wanted to comment one more thing about what we've done to date, and that is that we've done a tremendous amount of sensitization and promotion of the concept of regional integration in general, and how higher education is a motor in regional integration processes. You'll find on the HAQUA 2 website a number of learning materials that have been developed from professionals across the continent, not just the continent, but in other regions of the world as well, looking at what regional integration is and means from different angles, from the angle of teaching and learning, from the angle of recognition, from the angle of quality assurance. And I think this has been an important step back to say we're not just looking at quality assurance in HAQUA, we're also taking into consideration from an academic perspective a wider panorama of regional integration dynamics. And this initiative will continue in the next phase. If you go to the HAQUA 2 website, and I'll flash that at the end, you see a nice interactive map where you can see how different countries have benefited from the initiative in different ways. I think that's quite important. And we're very conscious of the fact that there are holes, and I think now we have 5 years to work further to target potentially countries and institutions that haven't been brought on board to this important initiative yet. Why has this been successful so far? I mean, obviously there's always work to do, and there are ways that this initiative can be improved. But in general, it is felt that the fact that we're really supporting the regional processes, bottom up, and articulating them with the continental process is essential. I think, as I mentioned prior, the East African community already has a declared political higher education space. There are mechanisms for quality assurance and evaluation and assessment and evaluation of professors in the CAMES space. SADC has its own framework, it has its own credit system. So I think that any initiative like HAQUA, which has a continental ambition, couldn't function if it didn't work from the regions up, respecting their differences and working with the key actors in those regions. I also think this element of training the trainers, because it's a massive continent, so we can't really have an impact unless we have strategic individuals that then can reach more widely. And also this emphasis we've tried to put on the interlinguistic dimension in Africa, which is always a challenge, but creating materials in major African languages, creating spaces for networks of QA professionals in Eastern Africa to work with those in Francophone Africa, etc. Promoting Lusophone Africa, which, by the way, they tend to be a little bit forgotten, our colleagues from Lusophone Africa. So I think that has been really important, and we've made a huge effort under HAQUA 2. To preview now very quickly what's coming. Again, this is the third phase. It's a 5-year phase. It is being implemented by the same consortium that implemented HAQUA 2, so Obriel Global, the Association of African Universities, the German Academic Exchange Service, and the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education. But, and importantly, it is supported by a steering committee of strategic partners, 9 of them listed on this slide, representing in some cases regions and in some cases linguistic groups. And these strategic partners are eminently important, and we'll actually be having our first meeting of this steering committee tomorrow in the context of this very conference. HAQUA 3 has certain principles, and again, this is a reassertion of certain values that we feel in listening to all the colleagues that have collaborated around HAQUA, what we really need to purport and bring forward. One is continuity, so continuity between what we've done in the past, taking it forward, building it, expanding it, respecting African diversity and regional dynamics, something I mentioned before, building African capacity to lead. You'll see, for example, the AAU in this round is really leading on certain of the key areas of HAQUA 3. Olushula mentioned, for example, the African credit system area, which is one component of it. Building understanding of regional integration, something I alluded to before, multilingualism, empowering female leaders in the quality assurance agenda, and perhaps more widely in the higher education leadership agenda. Africa in a global context. So what is Africa's integration process, and how does that compare or relate to what our friends in Southeast Asia are doing? What can we learn from each other? Dialogue, of course, with Europe, but also dialogue with Latin America. Greening and environmental sustainability, that we have to consider now in all of our cooperation and all of our funding mechanisms with the EU. So I think through these different areas, we're going to put a tremendous amount of emphasis also in our assessment of the initiative. We have 5 major work areas under HAQUA 3. It is a monster of an initiative. It's wonderful, but we're going to have lots of work to do in the next 5 years, and there's going to be lots of entry points into this initiative where your universities can potentially participate, some more than others. One entry point, one work area has to do with the African credit transfer system. There will be a massive pilot where we'll select 10 countries and at least 10 universities per country to pilot the African credit transfer system, accompanied by training and political sensitization. We're going to be working on the topic of data for policy making and enhancing capacity at the institutional level and the national and regional levels to collect data on higher education, but in a comparative manner, so that we can really assess better whether CESA 25 has reached its goals. I think that's, of uniform importance. A work area dedicated to the Pan-African Agency, where again, we're going to continue this process of consultation, try to define a governance structure for this agency, try to move forward with some of its key functions. And of course, a work area related to internal and external quality assurance, training, capacity building. There will be more agency reviews, there will be more training programs. There will be new elements to these training programs. We're incorporating, for example, a training of student leaders in quality assurance, because students should be part of the quality assurance process. We're incorporating a forum of university leadership so that we can connect the university leadership to the quality assurance practitioners, etc. This schema just shows, and again, I won't dive into this, but it shows how the different work areas will be connected and what types of activities will be funded. And for every work area, there will be activities related to policy development, there will be activities related to training and capacity building, and there will be activities related to piloting and implementation. And at the end of this presentation, I list, over the course of 3 slides, which I will not read through, all the many indicators we will have to fulfill, which are very ambitious. And again, 5 years. How many quality assurance practitioners will be trained? How many countries will benefit from an external assessment of their QA agency or system? And by the way, it's 30. It's a big number, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll leave you with these slides. I think this presentation today was really one of many presentations, because this initiative has to address many audiences. I think the Vice Chancellors are essential. You've gotten a privileged first peek, but I really believe that you have to own this agenda, because if we just keep it at the level of the quality assurance practitioners or at the academics, I don't think we build the policy consensus or the institutional consensus going forward on all of these different elements of this important harmonization agenda. Here's a website for HAQUA 2, forthcoming is the website for HAQUA 3, and just to thank you again, you're very patient, and a special thanks to AAU for putting this on the agenda today, a very important leader and partner in this initiative going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Colucci. Now, there's few issues that are more central to the issue of quality in higher education than that of faculty and quality teaching. And I would like now to invite up Dr. Gervais from the Inter-University Council of East Africa and Mr. Samuel Ajapong from ESSA to talk about understanding faculty challenges in the East African community. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. So because of time, I can say that all protocol observed. Good evening. As you can see, it's a demographic of Africa faculty. It's an issue of data in the universities. As she said, I'm coming from Inter-University Council for East Africa. The question is, what is Inter-University Council? It is actually a government institution mandated to advise, develop, and coordinate all matters related to higher education and research in the East Africa community partner states. When we are talking that, we are talking about 7 countries which are mentioned there. And also, it was established by Act 2009, which should facilitate network and collaborate among member universities and other tertiary institutions in East African and beyond. I'm going to mention only few functions of Inter-University Council for East Africa. Somebody mentioned it. A meeting of presidents in 2017 mentioned that we have to create a common higher education area in the East African community, which we are working on. And so far, some tools have been developed in East African community, which are their regional quality assurance system, East Africa qualification framework, higher education, East African quality assurance network, staff and the student mobility framework, and policies. I want to just mention one point in something we have been saying about mobility. We have established what we call field structure model, where a student from Rwanda, Burundi, can go to study in Tanzania, and he or she pays like a Tanzanian, which means that we have harmonized the fees. There's no international students in the East African community. When you are moving from one country to another country, you pay like a local person. And so that's what is an achievement. And let me go straight to major point of here, data about staff, universities. Actually, East African community can count almost 1,500 universities today. So the objective of this study is to document data availability and gaps. Estimate current faculty demand. Number 3, project future faculty demand. The methodology, as most of us here are researchers, we know methodology can be used to be able to collect data and to analyze them. So data needed for the analysis are number of faculty exist rates, students and enrollment. And also, these are policy norms needed or which used in order to analyze the data collected. Growth in student enrollment ratios, student distribution. We have also student-teacher ratios and faculty gender ratios. Those are the norms used for this. And so we took some disciplines to make our analysis. And those disciplines can be categorized into 5. Number 1, arts and humanity. 2, education. 3, health and welfare. 4, natural sciences, and so on and so forth. And number 5, agriculture. So these are the disciplines which were worked on. So these are a summary of data gaps we identified. Number 1, many data gaps exist, and their nature varies substantially across member states. Number 1, wide variation in latest years for which higher education data are available. This, when we went to collect data, were in 2022. But the data available in some countries, some universities, were in 2017. So we're in 2022, but data available 2017. You can imagine which decision you can make in 2023 when you have data of 2017. And so we have other summary of gaps, lack of higher education policy norms in most member states. This means that in several countries visited, they don't have norms. And I believe that in education without norms, it becomes very hard to have a quality of education I'm talking about. Lack of centralized data collection and the sharing systems. You go to National Council to ask data, you can't find them. So where are you going to find them? Analysis of current faculty. So this was needed by the current year we used. And so this is how we made calculations. Current year, then we have additional faculty needed, then we have also replacement to be able to know faculty for the current period. But we can also target it for the future. We do the same formulation. What we have today, additional we think we might add, replacement we might do, then we think about how many do we need in the future, the growth, because it will depend on the growth of students. So because it is issue of ratios. Selected the results we used here, as we said, we have worked in 6 countries, because by then, Democratic Republic of Congo wasn't in East African community. So we worked on 6 countries only. But here is Kenya. The data we got was 2017. You can imagine how data is an important element for our organizations. You can see policy norms from Kenya, what they're asking, student-teacher ratio. And you can see actual we have. There's nowhere we meet the standards. If we take only number 1D, the standard is 18/1, but we have 27. And also currently, we have only 19,908 students. We are projected that in 2030, we'll be having 35,232. How are we going to cope up with this ratio, student-teacher ratio? We go to Rwanda, it's the same scenario. When you come to Tanzania, the same scenario. We come to Burundi, the same scenario. We come to South Africa, same thing. So we have a problem of data, collection of data. And so I was just talking to somebody this morning. If we do not have data, how can we make right decisions? It's not possible. So data collection is paramount important for Africa universities to be able to fly. And we came to analysis of faculty gender, where you can see also, according to the policy norms for faculty gender ratio, which we used from Kenya, is 2/1. Only Kenya themselves are respecting that ratio of gender. Other countries, not yet. But we hope that as we talk about it, we are going to improve ourselves. So, in conclusion, these are the key noted challenges. Number 1, availability of data required for analysis. I think many vice chancellors are here. Maybe yes or no, if I go to the universities, I ask, can I get this? They might not even give you if they have. While data is important. Number 2, lack of disaggregated institutional data, lack of centralized data, lack of current update data, lack of official national policy norms. Faculty simultaneously holding teaching position at different higher education institutions and arduous administrative process that create difficulties and the delays in accessing data. And so we can recommend to create awareness of data in Africa so I can be able to give accurate data. we have so many challenges. And all these challenges are due to lack of data. Sometimes I wonder, when we went through this study, when UNESCO produces data in Africa, how accurate those data are. When you go to the ground, you can't get them. That's a question we're asking. So do we hide data to ourselves, but we give it out of Africa? Question mark. I don't know. It needs a research to know if the data we supply to them are correct, or if not, are not cooked. And so, in this research, we acknowledge Carnegie Corporation of New York because it is the one who supported this study and other researchers mentioned. And lastly, what can we do next? Inter-University Council is embarking on creating a higher education information management system which comprises these 5 elements: University Information Management System, Academic Program Information Management System, Research Information Management System, Human Capital Information Management System, and other supporting systems such as regional accreditations, management, and regional staff and mobility. We do believe that if we are able to arrive in this, we'll be capable to have accurate data. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Jarvis. So I'll go on to talk about, okay, thank you very much. So based on the presentation by Dr. Jarvis, we all recognize that there is faculty crisis. The number of students outweigh the number of faculty members that we have in our classrooms. If you look at the data he presented, I don't think I can go back, but then you could see that the student-teacher ratio is far below the targets that we are looking for. And this came from the analysis from the DAF EAC that we did recently. And this was based on a consortium formed, made up of 4 organizations: the Education Sub-Saharan Africa, the Association of African University, the Population Reference Bureau, all came together to do this analysis. Before moving to the East African community, a similar research was done in Ghana as the pilot study. And this was also done in collaboration with the Association of African University, the Education Sub-Saharan Africa, and then the government of Ghana, which is the Tertiary Education Council in Ghana. The results also showed a similar trend and even far staggering results when it comes to gender equity in our universities. And I'm happy today we've talked about gender. It will amaze you to know that out of 120 full professors in Ghana, only 8% are women. And when it comes to faculty dynamics in Ghana, the government will need to recruit more than double of the current faculty members in order to meet the student-teacher ratio targets that we have in Ghana, which we call the policy norm. Based on our analysis, the Education Sub-Saharan Africa conducted a research to come out with solutions or to understand the solutions that are being implemented by organizations or higher education institutions across the continent. In my presentation, I'm going to walk you through some of the potential solutions. I say potential solution or observation because these solutions have not been tested or evaluated, and also data didn't exist on the costing of these solutions. So I'll quickly run you through some of these potential solutions in solving the faculty crisis across Sub-Saharan Africa. As the saying goes, we need to look within in order to find the solutions. So many universities across the region, particularly in the East African community, what we observe is that some of the universities were running courses or duplicating their courses that they run or the programs that they run within these universities. We also realized that a large percentage of university budget was going to non-academic staff, which was not allowing the universities to meet their mandate. In order to address these inefficiencies, the universities have played a role by looking within and analyzing to understand and remove duplicated programs from their university, as well as also pausing or offloading subject degree courses that are not offering academic rigor. We saw example in Kenya, where after an evaluation by the Commission of University Education in Kenya, they proposed that universities in Kenya remove courses that are being duplicated. What is the effect of doing these two or undertaking these two actions? It freed up budget for the recruitment of faculty members across these universities. It also served as an opportunity to place faculty members in order to at least meet the student-teacher ratios that we have across the East African community. There was also a freeze on non-technical staff recruitment, and this was proposed again by the University Commission for Education in Kenya, after an evaluation of the cost-benefit of keeping non-academic staff within, a large number of non-academic staff within universities. So contracts were reviewed, and also it led to the freeing of space for the budget of the university to recruit more academic staff, as well as to undertake research and generate knowledge within the universities. Another approach that we observed from our review was the part-time and urgent faculty member strategy. And these had a lot of benefits, but I'll touch on two, as well as also touch on some of the challenges that this approach has. Definitely, as you can see, this approach led to the cutting of cost, because in this approach, faculty members were not full or tenure faculty within the universities. They were brought in to support and also to at least meet the growing demand of students or the increasing student-teacher ratio within these universities. It also served as a pathway for universities to train new academics that are joining the university. But the challenge here is that we observed professionalism was low due to lack of professional development among these urgent or part-time faculty members, which in the long run affect the quality of education that are offered for young people. Many universities have solutions which our research also proposed or also gathered from here. There were universities offering orientation or induction so that part-time faculty members could integrate within the academic community. Also, some universities were conducting continuous professional development for these new and part-time faculty members. There were mentoring opportunities for seasoned faculty members. Also, some of the approaches that were observed, because of time, I would like to quickly run through this. There was the capping of student admission, particularly at the undergraduate level, and also the increasing of postgraduate enrollment. This we observed in Makerere University in Uganda, where they had a quota. They increased the quota of postgraduate recruitment or postgraduate enrollment, as well as decreasing or capping the number of students they recruit at the undergraduate level. This led to improving the number of PhD faculty members that are available within the university. Some other universities also introduced what we call the Professor Emeritus, and this we observed in Tanzania. The benefit of this is that universities had opportunity to bring back academics who had retired, as well as opportunity to mentor new academics who are moving through the academic ladder. Some organizations, such as the Association of African Universities, the Education Sub-Saharan Africa, and other organizations within the sub-region, are investing in research, databases, and also researchers. The idea is to improve the profile or increase the profile of researchers within the continent, as well as make them available so that universities across the continent could recruit from them. These databases make research available to the world. Okay, so thank you, Lucy, for the time check. So quickly, because of time, quickly let me go through this. There are also regional partnerships that have been implemented in order to address the faculty challenges. And I'll touch on one which is of interest to most of us here, which is the African Center of Excellence. Since its inception, the ACE project has been able to train over 3,000 PhDs, majority of which are women when it comes to combining PhD and masters. These are other programs or projects that are helping to solve the issue of faculty crisis on the continent. I also touch on some training and workshop that have been undertaken to improve the quality of faculty members. And this, as you can see, the AAU workshop run. The African Education Research Consortium is also running workshop to improve the quality of faculty members when it comes to undertaking research. Also, I can't speak here and not touch on the African Jobs Board. This is a collaborative platform which profiles academic jobs on the continent. And this is a partnership between AAU, Warwick Group, and also ESSA. I'll end here by, having a call to action. And as my colleague has mentioned, and has other members who have also stood here to present has mentioned, is the need for maintaining quality data and sharing this data in order for us to make similar analysis and make policy-relevant research and also come out with recommendations that are targeted. I would entreat all university leaders who are here in order to, maintain accurate data on faculty and students, as well as share this data for usage so that hacker will be able to analyze this data and use it for quality, so that gender analysis could be analyzed, so that the DAF analysis could be analyzed, so that we know how many faculty members are available within university, how many are needed in the near future in terms of 5 years from now. And a model that is being used by South Africa, which is working for them in terms of recruiting and then developing faculty members. I'll say thank you for your time and also for your attention. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you. I can tell we're all getting a little bit tired in the room, so maybe we should try again with a good big clap. Thank you very much for that. And I'm asking our speakers to stay up on the stage, because once we've heard from all of the speakers today, we'll be taking questions from the audience. I'm sure the presentations so far have sparked some questions on your mind, so please hang on to those. So I think we've heard a lot of very high-level concepts so far this afternoon: quality assurance, data around faculty. We're now going to really dive into something much more tangible and practical, and I'd love to invite onto the stage Professor Madara Agot, who's the CEO of UbuntuNet, Alliance for Research and Education Networking, and he's going to talk to us today about his work driving teaching and learning excellence through academic and partner collaborations. Thank you for your patience, and we'll give you a big round of applause. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, that's loud. Sorry. Good evening, and again, I just ask you to clap for yourselves. It is 6:15 and you're still here. Let's clap for ourselves. And I'll try to go through relatively quickly. As was said by the chair of the session, we are now moving to some more tangible ideas for possible solutions to a lot of the problems that have been mentioned so far. Super fast, who are we? We are a non-profit, Eastern Southern Africa. We were established in 2005. We operate the UbuntuNet network. Most of you who are in Eastern Southern Africa may never have heard of us, but you will have heard of organizations in your countries who own us and whose network is the one that we run as well. And the equivalents in West Africa, WACREN, and Northern Africa, ASREN. What do? We facilitate research and collaboration, especially in terms of digital transformation. And that's one of the aspects that we're going to talk about as well. We have our stand over there, so I will not talk more than that. You can look us up if you want to get more details About us, very briefly, that's our region. It covers 22 countries, 16 member NRENs. Currently, 14 are connected on the network. We're serving over 1,000 plus universities and research institutions in the region and about 3.48 million students and staff. So let me just go back a sec. The names in small print next to the countries are the organizations you may be familiar with within your own individual countries. That's our network, and again, there's a big map of it on the back. So I want to come to the motivation of the talk, and I just rushed through that because the stand is out in the back. There we are at the bottom. We primarily interact with the NRENs, but the question is, if you're talking about value, what value do we add? How does membership of an NREN in the Alliance reap any dividends? But then, as an institution, what benefits does membership in your NREN reap benefits to you? And most of you have an NREN that supply with connectivity. And then how do we impact national goals? A lot have been discussed. Continental goals, a lot have been discussed as well. We want to pick just one aspect. Sorry, the figure has gone over, but it's saying there's been a surge in the number of universities, and you can see the number from 1989, about 446. In 2021, there were about 1945, but let's say 2,000 universities. This has not corresponded with the increase in resources provided by government. So if you had a similar graph, you'll find that the amount of money being provided per student has actually been going down in virtually all African countries. So this has led to a lot of problems. I'm just going to focus on teaching in terms of all the issues that occur in a university. Our teaching approaches have largely remained outdated across the continent, primarily because of lack of textbooks. And I'll talk about a little reasons why this is the case. You go to many lecture halls and the lecturer is reciting very slowly and students are writing virtually verbatim what the lecturer says or what the lecturer writes on the whiteboards behind them. So there's very little room for interaction between the lecturer and the students. There's very little active engagement between them, which is the case if you want to have strong learning and discovery as well. So a lot of the climates in lecture halls are very passive. A talking lecturer like we are now, and a quiet audience taking notes as well. This happens because I have to transfer facts to you. If you already had the facts, a textbook or other learning materials, then I can assign you reading and spend most of our time discussing those issues because you already have the facts given to you. So we cannot underemphasize or overemphasize the importance of textbooks and other learning materials as essential to what we do if we want to achieve the learning objectives that we have set out for ourselves. Now, there are textbooks. They're few, but they are there. They tend to be very expensive. So if I'm wealthy or my family is wealthy, I'll have all the textbooks. But the majority of my class colleagues will not. So we are further pushing the gap between those who have and those who have not, even within our own African universities. Libraries are required to have textbooks that are listed on syllabi, but as most of us know, most of them are not there. They're outdated. And even if they're there, you may find 1 or 2 copies for a class of 100 students. So again, it doesn't help you that much as well. So this is essentially what we have, and you can start on this graph anywhere you like. The publishers are reluctant to publish because 2 reasons. One, the books they will sell to, the number of students are relatively few. If I'm teaching a class of 30 once a year, and we're 2 universities teaching this course, that's 60 books a year to sell. It's not attractive to a publisher. But even when they do publish, our students tend to buy 1 or 2 as a group and photocopy them amongst themselves as well. So the sales are very low. Faculty have a disincentive to write because even when they do write, the publisher says, I have not sold enough to give you any royalties yet. And discussions we have had, there are many faculty who have published 3, 4, 5 years down the line and have never received any royalties from the publishers for some of the reasons that we have discussed. And so you end up with few books in the cycle. Like I said, you can start this circle anywhere you want, and teaching and learning is compromised. We are proposing to change this. And the way we want to do this is, 1, incentivize faculty to write books. And we pay you, UbuntuNet, the royalties up front. So when your book is ready, your royalties are paid. Now, the royalties paid to you doesn't mean we own the book. It simply gives us a license to make your text available freely to students across the continent. And that's the platform we're talking about. Even though it says there are very low subscription to universities, the figure had been done, but I want to update that it'll be free to everyone till at least 2028, 2029, because we now have funding that will cover the cost to keep producing books at about 50 per year up until that period. So that low cost now becomes zero. There should be a high usage of the books because they're now available. They're at no cost to the staff. They're at no cost to the students as well. And they're written by the staff themselves for their own classes. And therefore, they're relevant to whatever the staff happen to be teaching. The key one of our session was the partners. And again, we'll coordinate with the publishing to assure quality is maintained. We are not a publishing house. And I want to emphasize that. We coordinate. So, first of all, we'll issue calls for faculty teams. In other words, you can't write a book as one person. You need to be at least 2 or 3. That way you also peer review yourselves. And once those teams are set up, you submit your manuscript. We'll set up faculty subject advisory groups. They will go to the manuscripts, again, faculty again. They will decide this is okay, this is not okay. Once they say these are okay, we'll then send them out to faculty panels to review. Notice how many times faculty is mentioned, right? And this is where the partnerships come in. So the key thing is you write books yourselves, you review them yourselves, and then we go now to professionals to have them professionally edited and formatted in the right e-format. And our role ends up being relatively simple, which is to deploy them on an electronic platform that makes them readily available to all students and staff. Just to give you a very quick look, that's this Kindle that I've just put some books on. What the mock-up will look like. We're going to develop a Kindle-like platform. I shouldn't say we are going to. We are developing. The process has started based on Redium, one of the digital rights management platforms. Because remember, the IP still remains with the faculty member. We're just licensed to make it available as well. You can download it from your institution's network. Most of them are connected either on our network or the networks of WACREN or ASREN. We're targeting to produce about 50 books per year starting next year. And like I said, we have started that process already. What's the impact? My last couple of slides, then I'm done. Students are already using their devices to access digital materials where books don't exist. So just like Kindle, you'll be able to access it from any digital device, whether it's your phone, tablet, laptop, etc. Many universities are increasingly having broadband Wi-Fi. And if you're on the network by your NREN, that's the organization in your country, then they are directly connected to our servers. So downloading will be relatively fast because you don't go to commercial internet to be able to access. If you're not, it doesn't matter. You still end up on commercial internet as well. This should result in improved interaction between students and the lecturers because the students now have reading materials developed by the lecturers themselves. It also, on the lecturer side, should increase academic authorship because you now have more and more faculty writing textbooks, as opposed to us constantly recommending textbooks written by faculty from outside the continent. And because it is digital, like Kindle, you can deploy to millions of students across the continent at no additional cost, because it's, again, they're back to digital files. Again, thank you for your attention. I'm around for the next 2 days. We can talk a lot about it as the days go on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that short, sharp, very powerful delivery. Now, I'm sure anyone who's been to COREVIP before would know to expect the unexpected. And so we have a last-minute addition to this panel. I'd like you all to welcome Ms. Alan Mukwana, who's going to talk to us today about new funding for science in Africa. And she is from the Science for Africa Foundation. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for giving me the opportunity to keep you here for the next 5 to 10 minutes. I was given 5 minutes. I'll rush through my presentation. I would just like to recognize the Secretary General for allowing the program to change. I have an urgent meeting in Kampala, so I need to leave early morning. So I'm just going to talk to you about Science for Africa Foundation, the new funding, African funder for science on the continent. Very briefly, we are a Pan-African, non-profit, public charitable organization based in Nairobi, and our vision is to be the leader in strengthening African science for a better future. I'll leave my slides with the organizers so you can have a look at the detail. So I'll skip that. So our thematic focus areas are health, climate, and agriculture, because these are the, we feel these are the problems that Africa is faced with, and these are the problems we need to find solutions for. So our core business is convening. We bring together people, experts in the fields, to create scientific communities and come up with topics for research or targeted funding. We design programs, so we bring together great minds and experts to guide how we think about problems and then design programs that speak to that. We speak on behalf of our scientists and guide funders on where to invest. Africa is big and we have several challenges. Targeted funding is what we are looking at. And then we do oversight of the programs and projects that we deploy across the continent. So, and all this work we do through science leadership and careers. So we build careers through, I'm talking to the right audience, through the universities and research institutions. We also do science innovation, translation, and entrepreneurship. And lastly, we do strengthening the science ecosystem, because we all understand that however good a scientist you are, it's hard for you to operate in a broken system. And so we work with institutions to build those ecosystems. I'll skip this slide. It's just an emphasis of what we do and what we expect out of our programs, like building capacity and strengthening the ecosystem, and go to some examples of the programs we have. So we have the Grand Challenges Africa program that's really science, innovation, and translation and entrepreneurship. This is about innovation, translating your research from research to innovation. We have several projects running across the continent. We have different focus areas. I'm looking at the time versus the detail. But maybe just to highlight funded innovations by regions, we have 20 projects in Western Africa, 3 Central Africa, 50 East Africa, and 30 in South Africa. Then we have one of our big flagship programs called Developing Africa, Developing Excellence in Leadership and Training in Africa, Deltas Africa. So Deltas Africa is a consortium model where you have a lead institution partner with several or other institutions to come and apply for a pot of funding over a period of 5 years. There are trainings for PhDs and postdoctoral trainings, masters. There are programs that do internships as well. And then creation of research groups. So Deltas Africa is about scientific quality. So we're quite keen on scientific quality. Then the research leadership, as we talked about. There's so much wraparound research that's needed, things around leading a group. How do you attract funding for your group? How do you create institutions that attract the next generation of researchers? So that's the leadership. Then there's the research management and environment, and I'll speak to this a little bit more later. And then the scientific citizenship. We need to engage with our communities to really understand science. These are some of the areas where the consortia are placed. I'll skip them because I've been shown the 1 minute mark. Maybe very quickly, just to say that we have the Open Research Africa. It's an open access platform for publishing, and you will find the details of these initiatives on the slides once they're shared at the end of it. The next tool that we developed is the Good Grant Practice Standard that helps institutions assess their capability to manage resources. And then lastly, I'll go to this particular program, which is really speaking to how you build research systems in your institutions. And one of the things we are looking at is engaging the leadership, such as yourselves. How do you allocate resources to research management or the research systems in your institution? How do you create sustainability for this function within your institutions? We are partnering with the African Standardization Organization to create a good research management practice standard, which is really a capacity building tool for institutions to build their research systems. And of course, it's quite key to have people support the researchers so there's training and capacity building programs around those staff at your organizations. And then you can, this is my last slide. So we want to engage university leadership and academia across generations, because as vice chancellors, your term is limited. If you've set up systems, we want to make sure that the next leader actually builds on the systems you've built rather than breaking them apart. We need to have leadership understand the importance of these research systems at the institutions. And then, of course, I talked about the sustainability. We are partnering with Essence, WHO, TDR on how to convince funders to increase indirect costs to institutions as long as they are transparently accounted for. And then the standards I've talked about and the people that would support the researchers. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all our panelists. Now, I know it's late, but I think these have been very rich presentations that probably sparked a lot of questions. And so if the Secretariat allows, if we can keep everyone here for another 5 or 10 minutes, just to hear questions from the audience. I know it's late, but impress your colleagues that your brains are still functioning after 6:30, a long day at the conference. Can I see any hands up for a question? There's one over here. Can we have are there roving microphones? Can we get a microphone to this man? There's one here.
Good afternoon and evening, both. Mine is only that I don't know whether it was deliberately from you are in Namibia, but we did not see about the quality assurance of Namibia. Does it exist or is not there? because that office I know is nearby. But I did not future anyway. Zambia is there, is our neighbor. Maybe you must do something because I want to find out. It's only that when I wanted to talk about it, but the professor touched on that one. I raised up my hand that time, but I was so disadvantaged. This side you don't look. Thank you very much, madam. Now you have looked at this side. What I wanted to say is still going on with the accreditation and the quality assurance. You see, it disturbs me year in, year out. When the result comes, especially when it's the highest level, which is grade 12, standards that have been set by institution is very discouraging for students. The examinations have been released. The government tells you the rating for this is A. I'll take an example. Is 7. The same night, an institution of higher learning is saying, no, if you want to come and register with us, I don't know for you people of quality assurance, look at this. The same night, the institution is saying, for us to come and study with us, that A of yours with us here, which is 9 there, here is 5. Now, who is who? I've got a problem in this world of today. Maybe of the next generation, I'll be very happy. This one, I'm very frustrated. People help me. Quality assurance. Don't only, if we are talking about standard, make all, you see, I'll give you an example again. Take off, if there's someone from Angola here. You know what is the rating of Angola? I thought that it was higher. When they came to rate it from whether they're saying it's quality assurance, they're saying, no, this one is 4. But the number looks 9 and 4. How does it come to 9? It's like exchange rates.
Thank you. Thank you.
People on the quality assurance, no, this one, and standardize all the qualification, please. So that
I wouldn't.
Yes, no, listen, Mama, you gave me a chance, yes.
I want to give.
Yes, I'll give you a chance also because there are professors there whom you are giving more chance. Because me, I don't have a title. Leave me also, there are professors there, I have seen them. Let me also say what I have carried. That's why I came to the meeting. Now, what I'm saying is standardize all the qualification in Africa so that if I get in any institution, I must not be questioned more. All these, they are hearing here, the leaders, they are here. That's why I must talk to them. Go and tell them that Irukena Alex said this. Standardize them. When they go to AAU, they must tell us what is, we cannot, I go, Europe, you want us to go and study in Europe. When we come from Europe, our qualifications, they are even written, not valid in the country of origin. Now, where is it valid? Thank you, you have heard. Go and tell them.
Thank you. I'll definitely give Dr. Colucci a chance to respond to that, but I can see another 4 hands up. I think if we collect those 4, and then we'll come back to the panel. So there's one over there at the back, and maybe to the gentleman just here in the red hat, he's closest to you first, and then we'll go one at the back, the gentleman here,
Dear colleagues,
and then Alushla can have
good evening once again. I would like to address a couple of things that I witnessed in the presentation. When they presented on East African communities, I saw the Democratic Republic of Congo was left out and it became an East African country since July 2022. So I wonder why it was left out, or it is not an East African country to the researchers. Then, on the question from the Bloomerang Media Institute, I think the challenge we have in Africa is we must decolonize our ideas. People should not tell us our stories. Look at the war in South Sudan as we speak. The death toll for the past couple of days has been above 20. Since we came to this meeting, no one has mentioned that something is wrong in South Sudan. We are making policies and then going and drinking tea. In the evening, there is jollof rice and a lot of good things. But we don't care about the people who are affected. When we are making policies, we must project to those who have no voices. Those policies don't affect us. I can catch a flight to New York next week if I want, and I have a good life. But what about those who are concerned that our policies are affecting? So institutions that are responsible for media activities, please define the ideas and the things happening to this continent the way they are. Tell our stories the right way. Do not twist the story because your funders have asked you to do so. Please. Thank you.
Can we go to the gentleman at the back, please, to my right, over there? If you could keep your hand up, so.
Bismillah. My name is Ahmed Mahmoud from Plasma University, Somalia. I'm very happy that our panelists today mentioned a crucial concept called regional integration, because AU divided Africa into 8 regional blocks. So if we align AU's regional economic blocks and try to flow these regional economic communities for all our own data collection, data analysis, reports, it will be easier for us to attain the Agenda 2063 for peaceful, prosperous, and integrated Africa. So let me congratulate our friends who collected data from EAC this point. The second point is, we know that politics is the head of everything. Without political will, nothing can be attained. So I would like to advise my friends who collected data from EAC to synthesize the problem of lack of centralized data into the countries and political heads of those countries. Number 3, we in East Africa, we always admire the East African community because they attained what is called a free movement. So since those people attain free movement, they do not have any justification for not centralizing their own data. So those people should take serious on this issue because they can easily move to other countries and they can easily integrate educationally. So I would like to urge the friends who collected data to sit with heads of East African community and to tell them this issue and so that they can take serious, because we, Somalia, we applied East African community and we want to join them because they have already attained regional economic, regional integration steps from preferential trade to free trade, and now they are in common market. Tomorrow they may have what's called a common currency. So if they do not integrate academically better, it will be difficult for their people to understand the essence of Pan-Africanism and the essence of integration, and that will harm the essence of the role of academia into the development of the country and the continent in broad. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So can we have this gentleman here, and then we'll take the lady at the front, and then the Secretary General as the last comment. Thank you. Here.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity, and I have a question for Ubuntu Net Alliance CEO, and I like your presentation, and my question is, you told us nice thing. So far, I have heard about IDROM since 2019, I think. And so far, how many universities have IDROM services in your region? Thank you so much.
Thank you. And let's get you a microphone.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I will be very brief. I am Smart Olarinde from a private university, Afeba Balola University, Ado-Ekiti in Nigeria. And I want to congratulate each and every presenter. Engaging, highly educative, and we listen. But my special thanks goes to the last presenter, not because she's also a lady, but because she ventured into the developmental topic of science for Africa, from research to innovation, and from science to impact. I am particularly interested. You mentioned that you have 20 projects in West Africa. How could I key into one of these projects, as my institution has at least 16 science-oriented programs in engineering and 19 in science, in the Science College. I would be very grateful if you could help us further. Thank you.
Thank you. And last question goes to Honourable Secretary General Alushala.
Yes, it's to the last speaker too. You mentioned a project, Deltas Africa. I'm aware of Deltas Africa 1 and 2 with AAS. Has it got any relationship with your own?
Thank you. So very conveniently, I think there was a question to almost all of our panelists. So I'm going to hand over the microphone. Maybe first I'll start let me start at the end. In the interest of time, if you could consider this your last word. So feel free to answer the question, but if there's anything else you would like to say briefly, then please do go ahead. Thank you. Is that working? Okay, maybe we can get there.
So I'll stand over here so I walk off before other questions come in. So yes, we have, maybe just to the Secretary General first, Deltas 1 ended at the African Academy of Sciences, and Deltas 2 is what we are launching at Science for Africa Foundation. Deltas 1 had 11 consortia and ended in 2021, and Deltas 2 was launched in March of this year, and it has 14 consortia in 54 countries, 54 institutions in 38 countries on the continent. So it's partially continuation, but mostly new, because now there are regions of North Africa that were not covered initially. And then on the issue of the grants in West Africa, so usually they are calls, it's competitive. They are usually calls posted in different areas of science for grant challenges. We just closed the climate and environment challenge, and we are reviewing those proposals. But please get our materials. They have the information, and we can add you to our mailing list so that you're able to receive these calls. And as a parting shot, I would really like to appreciate you all for your patience. And please do, if you do need support in setting up your research systems, want to intensify your research activities at your universities, drop me an email, because I'll be leaving very early. Drop me an email. There are materials at the desk. You could ask our colleagues from AAU. I'll leave them with some materials for distribution, on which my email is, and we can work together to improve those research systems. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. I just have two short, now I can't talk anymore. Two short remarks to conclude. One in response to our colleague from Namibia, who asked a lot of important questions. Obviously, there was some frustration expressed in how the national quality assurance is organized in the country. One thing I would like to mention as a bit of a recognition is that one of the co-authors of the African Standards and Guidelines for Quality Assurance was in fact a Namibian, Annalie Williams, and she was also one of the co-authors of the User's Guide for the African Standards and Guidelines. Namibia has not yet volunteered to take on an external assessment of its QA agency. We would welcome that in the next phase. Again, this has to be a voluntary process. But the advantage of signing up for such an external assessment is that it is an important way to force a culture of assessment on the agency itself, so assessment of the assessors, but also to look at how your practices are reflected against other practices in Africa against common defined standards. And it puts a certain amount of pressure on the system, I have to say, even though it's voluntary. So please, if you can help us lobby to get your national council to participate in this action, I think it would be really important. The question about, or not a question, it was more a statement that had to do with the RECs, the Regional Economic Communities, as building blocks for data, and I'll let my colleague from IUCEA address that. But just to mention that in HAQUA 2 and now subsequently in HAQUA 3, we will continue to build the data collection process from the regions up to support existing regional data collection processes or the construction of HEMA systems where there is a political consensus to do that and a key actor like the IUCEA that is driving that. So in East Africa, that's the case. We also have a budding process in the SADC region. In other parts of Africa, there's maybe not a regional mandate yet for data, and that's where we need to see who that regional interlocutor could be and what that community is, because as you know, in Africa, there are different overlapping communities. There's, regional economic communities that are also then defined and recognized by the African Union, but then you have overlapping communities. You have the CAMES space, for example. CAMES has a mandate to collect data, and it also articulates directly with the ministers in the region. So I think that's important. But that overlaps into West Africa, East Africa, Madagascar. So I think some of these questions about who is the regional body that then would support and channel the data is important. It's very clear in Eastern Africa, it's clear in SADC, but I think we have it less clear in other parts of Africa. And then, of course, the question about countries that overlap. And the DRC is one that is in several communities. And I think some of these questions we're going to have to flesh out if we want a really coherent approach in the future towards building regional processes to channel data collection towards a more continental comparative process, which I think for us would be the ultimate longer term goal. And I think that, one last point, and thank you from the colleague from South Sudan for that intervention. In HAQUA 3 in particular, we want to bring the initiative to countries that haven't been able to benefit yet. And in some instances, that means going to you and directly and recruiting your national QA authority, your universities to participate, because they might not have the same access to information when we provide calls or things like this for participation. But it's really important, and our colleagues in the European Commission have stressed this as well, to make this as inclusive and continental as possible, and to really identify certain countries that haven't really had participation or access in this initiative yet.
Thank you very much. I think the question was asked is only one. Why DRC? The project started 2019. So DRC wasn't in the community, it had only applied. That's why when you collected that data, it wasn't in. For the question the gentleman from Somalia asked, is only to submit the request or recommendation given. So I will report to my executive secretary, Professor Banyangimbona Gaspar, who will definitely report to the permanent secretaries of education in the partner states. Then they will report to the heads of state. That's how our organization is done. When you have a decision to make, are made from heads of state to the final decision. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think there was another question around the data and then making policy makers know about the data gaps that have been identified. So with the demographics of African faculty projects, we realized that there's a lot of data gaps when it comes to faculty members and students. And this was at the council level because we collected aggregated data at the council level. And to make them aware about these data gaps, forums have been organized. And then also engagement has been had through the IECEA, and then also through ESA and then AAU to inform them about these data gaps. I'll close my remarks by saying that it is important to unlock data if we want to have quality education across the continent. Thank you.
Thank you. I had one question, but I didn't quite hear it. It was hard to hear from here. Yes. Sorry, there's a microphone coming right behind you.
I heard about e-rooms in your presentations. And so far, how many universities are these e-room services in your region? That's my question.
Oh, how many universities have been connected?
Yes.
Okay. We have connected 16 countries. Then within the countries, there are the organizations called NRENs, and collectively, they have connected over 1,000 universities and research institutions.
Is that your last word?
Oh, my last word is that I will be looking for you, all of you, because remember in my presentation, the word faculty appeared very many times, so that we can partner and move this forward. The hard part is normally getting money. We have money now. Now we look for faculty to write items for themselves, for their own students. I'll be looking for all of you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. I hope you all sleep well tonight with that morning. Well, thank you all. I said before you were getting tired. I'm sure you're now tired and hungry. So thank you for staying right till the end. And I would ask you also to thank our fantastic speakers here today for giving us such a fantastic afternoon. And thank you as well to AAU for providing the platform for this wonderful session. Thank you, and eat well.
Hey, so this is Dishan from Unica University Common Application. I recommend you to watch AAU television.
AAU TV is the place to be for every person in higher education in Africa. Better be there or be nowhere.
Continuez de regarder la télé et surtout sur le AAU. Keep watching it and it will change the way you interact with higher education on the continent. AAU, great job.
I want to tell you that AAU television is fantastic. It's educative, it's informative, and it is a must for anybody who is interested in higher education in Africa.
When I was in Accra last year, I did an interview on this TV. It's a very important mouthpiece.
It's a data, it's a bank of all we need for the development of higher education in Africa.
People should make an effort to view it because it discusses very current issues of development across the continent.
I believe that the station will continue to promote the overall development of Africa, particularly in the tertiary education sector.
AAU TV provides a platform and shares a lot of information to a broader audience. So we wish you all the best, and please continue serving
AAU TV, the voice of higher education in Africa.